Welcome to the Filipino American Women Project, a podcast show that shares stories and life lessons told by individuals living or have lived in America that are of Filipino descent and identify as female. I'm your host, Jen Amos, a fellow Filipino American woman, and I'm excited for you to join us. Let's get started. Hey everyone, before we officially begin with the episode and introduce the amazing lady, Maryann Clark, I want to encourage you all to stick around after this episode. We ended up having such an amazing conversation that we started talking about other stuff, such as the importance of normalizing mental health talk, the realities of social media, and the benefits of storytelling. So after this episode, I highly encourage you to wait till after the credits for a bonus discussion. Thanks so much for listening. Now let's get started. Hi, everyone. Jen Amos here, your host for the Filipino American Women Project. And I am super excited. I was already having a wonderful conversation with this woman. She is a Christ follower, a mom of 5, and a mental health advocate for the Filipino community. Maryann Clark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I'm like totally fangirling.
I'm the same too. We're just going to be fangirling like the entire time we're having this interview. I'm sorry, say that again.
I said we're going to totally fangirl the entire time. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the pleasure is mine. Trust me. Let me tell you. So for anyone that's listening to the show for the first time, we actually started this on Facebook Live back in December 2016. And part of my fear at the time was that women, like Filipino American women, were not going to want to share their stories. I had numerous women say like, "Oh, I'm not ready yet. Oh, it's not my time yet," or "Oh, I don't have an interesting story." And so I really had to, go in the community and find people who wanted to do it, not because they felt like inadequate, but because they were doing it for everyone else. That, even though they thought their story was ordinary, they had no idea that if they just shared, someone else might find it extraordinary. So Maryann, I just want to thank you for coming forward and taking the initiative to be on the show, because I do believe that, we may think we're ordinary, but I think whoever is going to be listening is going to think, wow, like she is amazing. I mean, a mom of 5, are you kidding me? So.
You're so sweet. I'm learning how to take compliments with grace. So I appreciate your compliment. As Filipinos, we say, "Oh, no, that's okay." But I'm learning how to say, "Thank you so much. I do appreciate that." I wanted to share my story, and my initial reason for doing that was because I could not find a blog specifically towards moms, specifically towards Filipinas who are struggling. And after some major life events last year, with just our extended family, I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it, because if I couldn't find it, I'm sure somebody else is looking for it, and I might as well do it. So, my story isn't extraordinary, like you said, but I feel like my experiences may help somebody else. And if that's my life purpose and that's what God wants me to do, I'm all for it, because I feel like I'm doing what he's asking, if that makes any sense.
Yes. And before we started this recording, I completely agree. Is we don't realize what we're doing, how impactful it can be to other people. But even if that's not the case, like having our Heavenly Father, like using us as a living sacrifice, I think is more than enough, and I'm sure he's very pleased that you went beyond yourself and saw, you didn't stop yourself because of whatever insecurities or whatever mental blocks you had. You decide, like, you know what, I'm going to do this because this is where he's telling me to go, and I'm going to trust him.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've learned in my walk with Christ that if I don't listen, he's going to keep telling me. And then it starts to get real annoying. And then it gets to a point where I'm like, because I'm hard-headed, right? I'm a
Yeah.
Taurus, like I'm hard-headed. So I always don't want to listen. But once I do listen, I've learned that I am blessed beyond measure just because I was obedient. So being obedient is something that I'm learning, and it's an ongoing process. But I really feel at home in helping and serving others. And, we do that in our local community as well. So, I'm good with serving others and helping others in their journey if that makes them better versions of themselves.
Yes, absolutely. So speaking of which, why don't we talk a little bit about how you're applying that in your life today? And before we get to that question, let's talk a little bit about your background and what makes you a Filipino American woman, and then we could talk about what a typical day looks like for you and how you feel like you're serving today.
Sure. I am born and raised Bay Area. So Bay Area. And so like hella Bay Area. I
I
always tell
love it.
people, it's like, I'm so hella Bay Area. It's not even funny. Born and
Maryann,
raised.
I can't even believe you're a mom of 5. I love it. Like, I love it. You sound like you're one of my girlfriends my age. I love it.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I may sound cool, but if you talk to my children, they're gonna tell you I'm not. So, but I've been saying hella since, I don't know, forever.
Yes.
I lived in South Bay. My husband is from Daly City. Like, this is how Filipino we are. When you know that I lived in Milpitas and he lived in Daly City. So, and we met via a friend on AOL. That's how old we are.
Oh my gosh. I remember AIM just when it was about to end. So, okay.
Yeah, no. We met through his friend or whatever. Anyway, that's another conversation for another time. But born and raised Bay Area, I'm the oldest of 3 daughters. My parents immigrated to California, I think in 1963, 1965. So I am first generation Filipino American. I am a recent transplant to Arizona. I live in the East Valley, more specifically Gilbert, Arizona. We moved out here about a couple years ago. I mean, and we love it. Culture is different because now, we grew up as not a minority in the Bay Area. It's very diverse. And then we've moved to a more predominantly white LDS community, which is fine because I really do love the community and what they have. But we've also really built a strong foundation with a local church here, and we call it our new church home.
Oh, good. And I don't know if I just totally didn't catch this, but what made you move to Arizona?
Oh, because the Bay Area is hella expensive.
Oh.
And I have 5 children, Jen. So I've been a stay-at-home mom for years. I know that sounds really crazy, but I've been a stay-at-home mom. It was just a priority for us in our family. My husband really has just been the single income, and because we have 5 kids who are growing up and need to go to college and probably get married, it was important for us to be able for our money to spread farther. And because of where we lived in the East Bay, it just didn't seem like that was going to work. So we actually only had a 5-year plan where we lived in the East Bay. It turned into a 10-year plan. And then the plan really, we never reached our goals for that plan. So what we decided to do was to look elsewhere, and we actually heard God calling us to Arizona a long time ago. It's just we never listened.
Love it.
Yeah, we never listened.
This goes back to you saying how stubborn you are.
I'm very stubborn, and anybody who knows me knows I'm stubborn, but I'm trying to be better. But
I love that you're self-aware. You're self-aware.
I'm very
That's part of it.
I'm very self-aware. I will tell you that I'm a mess 99% of the time. And my kids will tell you that because I forget things all the time. But and here's the thing. The funny thing is, once we allowed God to work in our lives, I'm going to tell you that, and I'm going to write about this in the blog also, how God brought a family of 7 on a single income with 2 dogs
Oh my gosh.
to Arizona. It sounds next to near impossible, but when I share that story, because I actually am writing it because our house anniversary is coming up in a couple of weeks. So it's just,
Oh,
yeah. So it's just crazy. And I've been reflecting a lot on it. And it's an amazing story. And yeah. And I mean, I don't want to take up all the time in this, but God really moved so many things. And we basically moved in a 3-month time span. We decided, and 3 months later, we were in Arizona.
wow.
Yeah.
I have to say, I have a lot of what I call mom friends. And for whatever reason, like, because when I was back in California, I currently live in Virginia now, a whole other story about that for another time. But back in California, I had a lot of mom friends that I made in my church groups and stuff.
Yeah.
And I have always had this admiration for anyone that's a mom, because I have a dog, but it's nothing compared to being a mom. I can only imagine. And just to hear like everything that you all did. And like I said, we recently road tripped. We actually wrote a year ago, we road tripped from California to Virginia to start a new life. And it was a lot of work to do it, but you having 5 kids and 2 dogs, and now you're going to have your houseversary.
Yeah.
um, I it just shows that anything is possible, given any circumstances. And I just want to highlight that and say how much I admire that. And I can only imagine like the challenges that came along the way, but it sounds like you did it and you're settled, and this is your new life now.
It is. I mean, as a transplant, I think the hardest part is that in the Filipino community, we really do rely heavily on family. And the hardest part about leaving the Bay was to not have the convenience of having family close by.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side of that, when we do get together, it means so much more. So, I think sometimes when we are close to family, we take it for granted. And then now that my sisters, we don't all live in the same city. I have a sister that lives in San Diego. I have a sister that lives in Campbell in
Mm-hmm.
California. And we're all spread out, but when we're together, we love it. Like our kids all love it. We all have kids. We all have families. Um, my mom and my dad love it when we're home. So, I think we cherish each other more because we don't
Mm-hmm.
live together. And I think sometimes we forget that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's really awesome. I'd love to dive into what your typical day looks like now. And you've mentioned that your favorite thing is restorative yoga. And also prior to this call, we were talking about how you're in the early stages of launching your blog. So I'd love to hear more about that. And sorry, before we get into that, I think that's one thing that moving shows us, because I had, like I mentioned, I uprooted my life about a year ago. I lived in San Diego for 20 years, and I was already fairly close to my family, but I got a lot closer because I got a lot farther, if that makes
It's
sense.
true.
And so I love to hear that, even though you're this transplant and you feel you're like the minority in your neighborhood, you don't let that entirely affect you, because you know where your roots are. And also you've already established this community at your local church. And I think that's really awesome, because, even when for myself, when I moved out here, it was hard. Like I didn't have anyone other than my husband and my dog. And so I think it's beautiful that, I think that's the beauty of having family, or at least your immediate family, is that you weren't moving by yourself. You're moving with this big, your big family of 5 kids and 2 dogs and your
Oh,
husband.
yeah.
So
And my husband and all of our things, Jen, all of our things, which we probably should have still downsized probably like 30% of the things that we brought. We really still donated so many things. I mean, I think that the one advantage I think about building a community around you when you don't live near a family is that you get to choose who you spend time with. And I think you're more intentional about your time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've learned living here, is that I'm much more intentional with my time, because I know that in order to survive here, and this is what my therapist told me, okay, so it's not like I have this all-knowing thing, but my therapist had told me I must be a different person than I was in the Bay Area. I cannot be closed off, and I cannot not be personable, and I have to build my own community, and I have to have a full life in order for me to be able to survive here. And that's because of my mental health and for my depression, because I tend to just sit in my room and hide. Like, to be honest, like, that's something that I do. I have social anxiety, major social anxiety. So I had to learn how to be able to be okay with feeling uncomfortable, if that makes sense. Because I'm going to be in new situations all the time, so I have to learn how to be okay in that uncomfortableness and to move through it and be okay. And so living here, I've learned how to do that. I mean, my typical day, Jen, is not very glamorous. I'm usually just in typical mom in like yoga pants and some type of stained shirt.
That's the
right
life,
now,
though. That's the life.
it's the life, but sometimes, you just want to feel pretty. But I don't have time in the mornings. Right now the kids are in summer, so we kind of wake up later and they stay up really, really late. So I usually don't have teens up until at least noon. I do have my youngest. He's 3, so he gets up early, and he is very vocal, and he'll tell me that he's hungry. So I usually just feed him. I also, on top of being a mom, I work remotely for a software consultant company that is based in the Bay Area, which is really ironic. So I'm doing that part-time too. It's most of my day is always driving somebody somewhere. Somebody needs to always go somewhere. Somebody else always needs me to get anything and everything, or mom, can you please go pick this up for me? Or my husband is, can you please go pick this up for me? So I'm usually just, running around all day doing stuff for everybody. I do try to make myself a priority, and I've been working out at least twice a week. One of my favorite, like I said, like I had shared, is the restorative yoga. Yoga has taught me to be more present, and to accept where my body and my mental state is at today. And I think that's one of the great things about yoga, about that practice, is the fact that you must accept what your body is telling you right now, and you must accept what your mental state is right now, and just go with it. And that's the biggest thing I've learned from yoga. And I've learned just how to be like present, because I'm a mom and I think of 20 million things all day long. And and I want to make sure my kids are okay and they're healthy, and they have a relationship with Christ. Like, I think about 20 million things all the time, and sometimes I have to quiet my mind and be present and enjoy them, because my oldest is going to be a senior this fall, which is insane to think about. And I just want to relish in all of these memories with them, because they're soon going to leave me. Even if I have 5 kids, they're all really big. They're all good. I have 3 in high school this fall and 1 in middle school. And then my youngest will be in preschool, which is nuts. I know. Life is too fast.
All right. Jen Amos here, jumping into the middle of our show, as I always do, to remind you why this show is possible. So, at the end of every episode, I tend to say, if you didn't catch our guest contact info, don't worry, we'll have those in the show notes. Check them out. I worked so hard on them. You're welcome. Well, it's been brought to my attention that our show notes are not as easy to find as I thought, which is why, starting summer 2020, the Filipino American Women Project is proud to be partnering with Captivate, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host. Captivate is created for independent podcasters, designed from day one to help you to focus on audience growth and the expansion of your audio influence. One way that Captivate makes our lives easier as independent podcasters is by taking the guesswork out of making a website for your show. That's right, a website for your show. So listeners, starting summer 2020, finding our show notes will be so much easier. All thanks to Captivate. You're welcome, as always. If you're about to start podcasting or are getting burnt out from all the extra work of producing one, like building a website, consider a 7-day free trial, that's right, free, with Captivate by visiting thefil-am-woman.com. That's the Fil-Am, short for Filipino American woman.com. Or, check out our show notes in the meantime, which is in the details section of each episode. Once again, you can visit thefil-am-woman.com or visit the details section of this episode.
Man, that's amazing. So I feel like I have to ask this because, you mentioned a lot of your life is obviously revolves around like your kids and you're a stay-at-home mom. And I'd like to assume that you wouldn't be doing it unless you loved it, unless you loved being a mom. And so I think my question for you would be, what do you love most about being a mom of 5 and really just, like handling the household?
I feel like I've always had a calling to be a mom. It sounds really corny, but I feel like I've had that calling forever. I've always wanted to be home with my kids. My husband and I talked about it when I got pregnant with my oldest, that, what would be the best way for us to do this? Because we were young. I think we had her when we were 21. We took the scenic route, and so we had her at 21, and then we did struggle for a really long time, which we tell the kids quite often.
You remind them like, hey, remember we struggled for you. Don't forget that.
We struggle for a lot. Filipino parents always do that. You have to remember, like, this is what we did. But and I really just wanted to be there for my kids in a way that I was more present, whether or not they knew. I knew what I was able to do for them and help them. And I don't know, my parents worked really hard, and they worked a lot. And sometimes they were not able to come to performances. You're in elementary school and all of those things. And I remember I promised myself when I was little that I would be more present for my kids. So that was my goal. My goal was not to have 5 kids, but God has decided for me that this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very, very blessed. I have really great kids. I'm very blessed with a really good husband. We've been together for 20 years, married for 17. I think at the end of the I know, it's crazy. We really grew up together. Not perfect, not, like any marriage.
Totally.
But I feel like my husband and I have grown up together, and we've evolved into, pretty decent individuals who, even if we had kids early, we didn't allow that to be a defining moment in our lives. Like, we were able to keep moving forward and providing for our family the best way that we could.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's awesome. And I love hearing that you felt like it was your calling to be a mom. I feel like nowadays in the feminist cultural landscape, like, a lot of women don't want to be mothers. And so I think it's awesome that you say, like, I felt called and that's it. And I became a mom. I mean, I didn't know I was going to be a mom of 5, but here I am.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it is how it is, and while there were obstacles, I mean, I don't know, every time I go and try to work, I always have this, it's not mom guilt. It really is just like a pull back home. Like, okay, I think I really just need to be home. So yeah. And I'm okay with that. I think other people sometimes aren't okay with that, but I'm okay with it. I like being here for them.
Yeah, definitely. This isn't about them. This is about you and what you're meant to do and what your calling is and your purpose is. And that's enough.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd love to get to the life lesson that we want to share, because part of the Filipino American Project, the long-term goal is to publish a book where it has a collection of stories and life lessons told by Filipino American women. So we made it to the best part of the interview.
Oh my God.
Oh boy. And so you had mentioned prior to this call, there's two things that you pointed out that that you mentioned that I'd love to talk about. And first of all, the reoccurring theme you brought up throughout this entire interview and even prior to getting started is your relationship with Christ. And so you were saying that, the one life lesson you've learned is to keep Christ as the center of your life. And I'd love to hear why, and maybe a defining story that led you to, do that and put Christ in the center of your life.
Right. Sure. I grew up Roman Catholic, Filipino Roman Catholic, going to church every Sunday, never really understanding what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my early 20s, when I had my oldest, I really wanted to turn my life around because I was not necessarily the best teen ever. I snuck out of school. I've cut school. I did a whole lot of things that I don't know how my parents loved me through it. And to this day, I still have no idea, because my kids aren't like that. And I think it's just, I'm already having a hard time with regular teens that just kind of have regular teen stuff that
Mm-hmm.
thinking about myself as a teen, I treated my parents horribly. So I wanted to build a foundation for my family that was bigger than myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a Christ follower, I think probably right before we got married. And the defining moment in my life, and I would say just like in my husband's life and just generally for our family was, and I asked my husband if I can share this because it's something important, is that my husband's a recovering addict. So if you were to meet him, that's not something you would think. And then people always say that to me, because he's the sweetest guy. He's very sweet. He's a really nice guy. And that's one of the things I love about him the most. He's just really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes not really nice, but he's a really nice guy. And, he just made some choices, and our family was growing, and I had to make a decision. And we actually separated for a short period of time because I needed him to make a decision on what was a priority for his life.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to do, 12-step, Christ-centered counseling, and that one decision to have it be Christ-centered recovery and 12-step and just counseling in general, I think that saved our marriage and that saved our lives.
Wow.
Just because of the fact that we looked at things larger than ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about me, and it's not just about him. It's not just about the kids. It's about what God has called for us. And I can honestly say, and I know my husband says it all the time too, when people ask us about what is the secret to being married for 17 years. And we always say the same thing: have Christ be the center of your life. And everything else will follow. And I know that probably everybody hears that in church all the time, but I really am a living testament to that, because my fear at 25 was that I was going to be divorced with like 3 kids.
Oh my, yeah,
because I really didn't think that it was going to work. But because we really dug into who we were as individuals, in our walk with Christ, and then together as a couple, I think that has helped our family tremendously.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's always good to, there's a lot of, I guess you can say, non-believers out there. And sometimes I think the best way to overcome non-believers or what have you is just telling your story. It's like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work for you or not, but this is what has happened to me because I decided to put Christ in the center of my life. And I love how that's not just a mantra for you, but that's for you and your husband. And, I think that's really part of your success. Is it's not about just you and your husband, taking care of the family. It's having Christ in the center of all of that. And I think that's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we try. It's not perfect, but I feel the Holy Spirit lead me every day. Like I have so many stories in the last month where it's not something I necessarily wanted to do, but I listened anyway. And conversations or meetings with random people, you leave that encounter and you're like, thanks God, like that was cool, because if I didn't listen, I would have missed it. So learning to be obedient is like something that I will forever have to learn, but I'm getting better at it.
Yeah, and it's never going to be perfect, and I think that's the one thing. Like that's why I feel like I have this unconditional love and trust for God, because he shows, like, he constantly forgives me, and that's the whole idea. We're not perfect followers, right? We just have to keep getting back up and asking for forgiveness and just moving forward and realize, like, yeah, like I'm imperfect, but I'm a display of God's love. Like he doesn't need me to be perfect for him to love me and to use me, so yes. All yes. Well, I would love to have another conversation sometime in the future. I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 months from now, to actually dive into mental health, because I know that you're a mental health advocate, and I'm very curious to learn more about that and discuss that more with you. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up, so I want to put that out there as a teaser for everyone that's listening to the show, who possibly struggles with mental health. Just a little thing about me. I had just a week or two ago, my doctor had diagnosed me with mild depression, and I think I'm still in denial of it. It took me almost a week and a half to pick up my meds, and I still haven't picked them up. And so I think mental health is it's a stigma in the Filipino community. It's not considered a problem, I think, for a lot of, especially first generation Filipinos and immigrant parents. And so I think that'll be a fun, not fun, but it'll be a good conversation to have for another time. And I appreciate you kind of, mentioning that before we started, because it makes me want to talk to you again.
No, Jen, we can talk whenever. And as a Filipina who has depression and anxiety, and it's taken me a long time to even be okay with saying that, taking the first steps to help yourself is very important. So I applaud you for even just doing that, and I applaud you for picking up, for just taking those steps. And while it's hard to accept, you will feel okay once you start doing things like take your meds and other self-care things that, work for you. So I'm here, if you ever need somebody to talk to you about that, we can talk offline or whatever you want, or text me. I really don't care. I'm very open when it comes to helping people in our community, because of the fact of there's such a huge fear and shame and guilt and all of those things. And I just, I want you to know it's okay, and you will be okay.
Well, thank you, Maryann. I really appreciate that. Oh, and that's my dog. Maryann, it's been such a pleasure having this conversation with you. I love how vibrant you are and how transparent you are with your life, and how I'm sure, like you did mention, that you have social anxiety and stuff. And I just want to thank you for, if this was you stepping out of your comfort zone to share your story today, I want to thank you for doing that. And I feel connected with you, and I'm looking forward to possibly future shows together. All right. So everyone, if you are interested in learning more about Maryann Clark, you can find her on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at The Filipino Mom. She also has a blog, which I'm excited to follow and see it grow and progress. You can visit her blog at MaryannTheFilipinoMom.blog. All righty. So we're about to wrap up. I want to thank you again, Maryann, for taking the time to share your story. I just wanted to see if you had any closing thoughts or anything you want to say to listeners, future listeners, anyone that's going to listen to this now or later.
Oh gosh.
No pressure.
No pressure, because it's gonna be recorded forever. I mean, first and foremost, I want to thank you for just starting this project. I think that takes incredible just vulnerability and strength to do. It's not easy to start anything new. So I applaud you for doing this. I would just say to all of the Filipino community and just anybody who's struggling with mental health, to that it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to struggle, but you're not allowed to live there. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to live in that sad little space. You know, God wants you to thrive and serve him in a way that you can never imagine. And I think that, you know, using your platform and just, you know, with the blog, I really believe that we're able to serve others and, you know, do things that make you scared. That's what I've learned this year. This year is about doing a whole lot of things scared, and it's okay to be scared.
Yeah.
It's Love so it. I do a lot of things scared now, and even if that means I'm terrified, it's okay. But you know, it's going to be okay for those people who are struggling, and you know, ask for help and know that you asking for help allows you to heal yourself as well as anybody around you, your community around you. You healing yourself really does heal the community around you. So
I love that. That's a good PSA for
everyone. I've heard that a lot, and I really do believe it, because the tools that I've learned, I've taught to my kids, who then have taught to their friends, and I've taught, you know, tools that you learn in therapy or group therapy. I've taught to my sisters, and they've taught them to their, you know, and through everything that I've experienced, it helps the community heal, because you don't know any better, you know. Destigmatizing or not talking about your feelings doesn't help you. We really need to talk about our feelings, and it is okay to be sad or, you know, anything like that.
All right, this wraps up Maryann Clark's story. Thank you so much, Maryann, for sharing your story and your life lessons and giving all of us just encouraging words. I'm super grateful for you. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we had an amazing conversation that we actually continued it afterward. So I'm going to be playing that next part after the outro music. So stick around and you get a bonus episode or bonus discussion of 15 minutes talking about more discussions on mental health and social media and other fun topics. Here we go. And there you have it, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories and life lessons told by the Filipino American woman. If you're interested in sharing your story, please contact us at thefilipinoamericanwoman@gmail.com or find us on Instagram at thefilipinoamericanwoman. Until next time.
I want to share like part of why I ended up talking to my doctor is because I got to a place where I feel like I just said I got to a place, but I got to a place where I did enough self-diagnosing, and I did enough of like figuring it out myself and trying to talk to friends and read books and exercise and do all these things. And yet it still felt like something was missing. And really this year, I feel like I've, you know, other than depending on my husband, which is a whole story in itself, but this year I've really started to take advantage of professional help. Like I just wrapped up physical therapy, and for years I had this hip problem, and it's so crazy because you think you can do it all until like you can trust a professional to actually, you know, take care of you and see what's actually wrong that you're not seeing, and that's kind of like my baby steps to, you know, being okay with asking for professional help, because even if I can figure it out on my own, it makes a difference. At least I'm beginning to find it's making a difference that when other people can hear you talk, and not friends, you know, not friends, not your loved ones, because they're all biased in their own way, but to hear an unbiased professional hear you talk, and listen to your problems, like it's a whole different experience I'm coming to find. And I'm very open to it. I'm very open to like getting examined, you know, and so it was pretty interesting when my doctor said that I had mild depression, because I was like, well, I feel like I've always known that I had it, but you're like the first professional to tell me that I have it. And so there's something reassuring about that. And so I'm sure in future episodes I'll share a little bit about like my journey and exploring this. Like for the first time in my life, I've been told by a professional that I have this, and I'm just more curious to see what the journey will look like, and what I will learn about myself along the way, and hopefully, you know, be an example to other people that may kind of be in denial themselves, like kind of where I'm at right now with like, do I really need those pills? I don't know. Maybe I can do an alternative, healthier way. I don't know. So anyway, I want to thank you for, you know, bringing light to that. And I think it's very, I feel like we're having like a whole different podcast episode right now. I love it. But I want to thank you for really pressing that, because I do believe that, I do think that a lot of Filipinas tend to minimize their feelings and what they're going through, and even when they do bring it up, we kind of brush it away very quickly. And so I love that you are taking time to, you know, to address it and say it's okay. Because, you know, I can talk about it, but it's nice to have someone else be like, yeah, it is okay. And we're going to talk about this because it matters. So thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, it's hard. The first day I took my very first antidepressant, I literally waited for my husband to come home from work, and I sat in front of him and I took that pill. And because I was terrified, because I didn't know what it was going to do to me. And like they do say for SSRIs, it does take a little bit of time for them to start to work. But how I look at medication now is, let's just say you're in a hole, and I had a family friend tell me this. Let's just say you're in a hole and you're not able to get out of the hole. Well, one of the ways to get out of the hole is to have like a step ladder, right? So, or like a step stool or a stool of any kind. So view meds as just a way to help you get out of the little hole that you're in. And once she told me that, I was like, oh, because I viewed medication as weakness, right? Because I, you know, and so once I started taking my meds, I'll tell you, Jen, like I felt more like myself. And it was just, I felt more like not in a fog, because a lot of times I was in a fog, or I was just didn't feel like myself. Like I was like Eeyore, and I had like this cloud and I couldn't figure out why. So, and I still do struggle. I still do struggle every day, but I make a conscious choice to do things that are hard, that challenge my mental health, so that I can move forward and not just sit. I'm not a very complacent person. I don't like being complacent.
Yeah.
I moved to Arizona, but I don't like being complacent. I like improving. I hate being stagnant. My husband and I are both the same. We both hate being stagnant. So we both try to improve and do things as best as we can, and or improve, you know, our lives in a way that we can, you know, just, it's more authentic. And I because I feel like social media sometimes is just so curated that everything looks perfect, and it's not true.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's just not true. Like and that's a whole conversation that I can talk about, especially with teenagers. Social media is not real, folks. Please never compare yourself to people on social media. Even to me,
You
if
know,
my pictures are dirty,
yeah. I feel like I think what people, or in general what we need to do is look at something, like look at anything that's kind of just in front of us as the tip of the iceberg. You know, it's funny because so I was kind of driving around doing errands before I spoke with you, and I was catching up with my Game of Thrones podcasts, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but you know, a lot of people had mixed feelings about the ending of it. And I'm just thinking, like, you know, people don't realize that, let's say one episode, even though you watched it in an hour or like 80 minutes, it took them 2-3 months just to produce that episode. And what I'm trying to say is that, you know, anything that's on your screen, it didn't just pop up there. You know, whatever social media post, whatever video is put out there, it doesn't just appear there. Like, there had to be some kind of thought process to put it out there. Even especially selfies, right? Like, people are like, okay, I gotta think about how to make the perfect selfie, how to get my angles right. And you only get to see that for a second when you're going through a feed, but there was a lot of thought that was put into that. And so I feel like when we look at things, to not just, you know, judge it by its cover, but to understand that there was a lot of things that went behind that, you know, for you to just see it in that 1 second, you know. And I think it's something to contemplate about and think about, and be, you know, just be more, just be aware of, so that just like you said, you're not just going through someone's feed and you're comparing your life to them, and it's like, those are only highlights, you know, like that's not, you know, if we followed anyone around with a camera, you know, for an entire week, like 90%, maybe 99% of the time, it's really boring. It's like, why am I watching this person sleep? Why am I watching
boring? Yes. People are always like, how do you do? I don't know. I just, you know, my life is very repetitive and tedious. And that's what I tell people a lot. I do love being with my kids, but a lot of days I tell my husband, this is so like tedious and repetitive that sometimes it's annoying. And it's just how life is, you know? But yeah, I can take one quick picture of me smiling with my son and you assume that he's super well behaved and not a crazy kid, and no, he's a really crazy kid.
Yeah, it's like that one moment, it seemed perfect, but behind the scenes, it took forever for him to even just sit next to you and listen to you and want to take a picture with you.
Yes. Oh, I have to bribe him with so many things in order for me to just have him sit. He's a boy. He's a 100% boy. You know, I have 4 girls, and having a boy is, I feel like I'm raising an alien, because I don't even understand. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I don't have the same body parts as he does. Like, I don't understand. I just recently potty trained him. That was very stressful because I don't understand what to do with those parts.
I love it. I love it.
No.
At least you have your husband, because he can provide that perspective. I mean, when he's
home, but like, you know, I don't know. It's boy parts are very, I don't understand. Like, I don't. And it's just funny because he just thinks, you know, my son just thinks differently. He's a climber.
Mm-hmm.
So he likes to stand on everything. He has a very, very vivid imagination. So he can go from playing something to jumping off a coffee table or a chair. And, you know, he's a superhero, or right now he's Spider-Man. He's literally jumping. I can see him. He's jumping up and down, and he's Spider-Man.
I love
it. You know, but yeah, I would, you know, I'm so thankful for you and just doing this, and, you know, giving me this opportunity, because I really do. I feel like we need to help our community out a little bit.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about, like, just in general.
Yeah, I think you know, the purpose of this project started was because when I wanted to look up stuff about the Filipino American woman in particular, there's not as much information out there about us. And so all we're trying to do is normalize like sharing our stories and saying, yeah, we're here, we're American, we live here. We may be dark skinned, but we do live this American lifestyle with a mix of, our cultural background. And I think, and that's all we're just trying to do is having that conversation. And even if we're scared to do it, we need to do it for other people who are just as scared. And when they see that, oh, they can just have a casual conversation, no big deal, I can do that too. I can talk about my issues as well. And so, hopefully this our conversation today has touched one of our listeners. And I want to invite everyone that's listening to, if this episode resonated with you, you can actually visit our show notes, and there's a way to leave a voice message. And so if you have anything you want to say or anything you want to add, you can just drop a voice message for us. And who knows, if we have enough messages, we can bring on Maryann again to continue the conversation. What do you think about that, Maryann?
I would love that. I'd be honored to serve other people who in our community or outside of our community that just needs that extra support. I believe in building community. I think it's the only way we're able just to heal ourselves and just heal everybody else around us.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think this pretty much wraps our interview today, Maryann. I love how we kind of had this 2-part episode, just talking about your story and then getting into mental health and then talking about your son and his different body parts. But yeah, I want to thank you so much. And, for everyone that's listening, I want to invite all of you to be part of the conversation. Please leave us a voice message or shoot us an email or hit us up on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. I see all of you, and I thank you all for, really being part of this new and growing community. Okay. Final words, Maryann. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Oh gosh, final words.
You get a second chance.
Oh my god. I would say the biggest thing I've learned this year for myself is to do it scared. So if there's something that God is calling for you to do, and He's been telling you for a really long time to do it, and you're terrified, do it terrified, because you don't know what's on the other side of that. That's my biggest takeaway from this year, even if it's mid-year. But that's my biggest lesson this year, is to do it scared. And I do a lot of things scared now. So I encourage everybody just to step out of their comfort zone and do it. Just do it. It'll be okay. And if it's not, it's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world, and we learn and grow. So just do it scared.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this call, but thank you so much, Maryann. I appreciate your time, and I can't wait to have another conversation with you.
Absolutely. Anytime, Jen. I'm so honored that you want to do this again, because I was just like, okay, cool, I'll do this again, and then this will be good. But yeah, if you would like to have me on, I would be honored to help in any way I can.
Awesome. Okay, well, take care now, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.